Coliseum. Here we are, together.
We get up early in the morning.
Even friends or families here.
It's game day, and this place is special.
This is Bill King at the Oakland Coliseum, the home of the Oakland Raiders.
History lives here.
Number 41, Philadelphia.
Great defense! Holy Toledo! The place has done well!
The players.
Intercepted quarterback.
Dak is blocking.
On the run. Touchdown.
That's 1,000 catches for Tim Brown.
The moments.
It looks like Clarence Davis. He's being knocked. The Oakland Coliseum is
Oakland Raiders have punched their ticket to the postseason.
And of course, the fans. Raiders! Pride and poise. Commitment to excellence. Raider Nation, it's Oaktown, baby.
There's where my dreams happened right there. Welcome to Johnny Donut Studios in beautiful downtown San Diego. This is called the Mad Bomber Podcast. And with me, as always, is the Oracle. And the Oracle has had a lot of fun this weekend. The Oracle went into the laboratory and he got crazy. And let's get right to it. So, Oracle, tonight we are going to talk about pick 36. We have a lot of time for the draft, and I believe we all know who's going to go number one. Pretty solid pick for the Raiders, number one. Number two is huge for the Raiders. And do you think the Raiders could be trading back from that pick at 36 and possibly going into the first round? I don't want to talk players, but because we'll get into that. But what do you think? Do the Raiders possibly come back into the first round?
Well, this is why stacking your board is very important, because this is when you're able to really assess what player is worth what. And when you're able to have the draft go by in the first round and you're like, man, player, let's say 18 is still on our board and it's pick 27, I think the Raiders would say to ourselves, maybe we go ahead and give up a 4th round pick or a 4th and a 5th round pick, and let's go up. Let's get back in the first round and let's go get the 18th player on our board. So I think that could be a very real possibility, depending on how the Raiders assess these players.
Could Trey Tucker be a trade day asset for the Raiders?
I think he really could be, because let's look at the wide receiver room right now. They brought Jalen Naylor in, which surprised me a little bit because I think he's very similar to Trey Tucker and his play style. They drafted Jack Besh last year, and they definitely want to see Jack Besh develop into that number 2 receiver. So with Naylor and Besh, and remember, the Raiders are going to be in 12 personnel a lot. So you're going to see Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer on the field a lot. Where does this leave Trey Tucker and bring in Derek Young? He's mostly a special teams player, but is he going to get some snaps at wide receiver as well? Who knows if they bring in another receiver, just like I said, that they view very highly on their board, but he's slipping down the draft a little bit as the picks keep going off.
I like the way you said Naylor and Trey Tucker are a lot alike. That's why I brought that up, because the difference, in my opinion, looking at both of their games, is one blocks and one doesn't. So, and I've been in Clint Kubiak's system. If you look at anywhere he's gone, from Minnesota to San Francisco, even at the Saints, that's when you saw Chris Olave starting to be more of a blocker, coming in to become a little bit more of a complete wide receiver. And I love that. I love the Naylor thing a lot. So without further ado, we are going to make this a roller coaster ride tonight. We also have a special guest coming on tonight.
Mm-hmm.
And we're very excited about this guy coming on. This guy really knows his Raider stuff. He brings us totally 180 degree a vision of the Raiders than I do. But him and Oracle, the young guys, of course, they're going to beat up on the old man tonight.
Oh, yeah.
And again, we are brought to you by Johnny's Donuts. Guess what, Oracle?
What?
Put on your John Spytek hat.
It's already on.
I'm going to Johnny's Donuts on Sunday.
No way. Are you
Going to
serious?
Johnny's Donuts. Yeah, I'm going to go present them with the Mad Bomber. I want them to name a donut after me. What do you think about that?
Oh, definitely. But
I want to call it the
describe
Fat
the donut.
I want to call it. Well, it's got to be chocolate. It's got to have peanut butter on the sides and no bacon. That's for yuccas. But anyway, I want to call it the Fat ASS. I don't want to say it long because that's what I am. All right, let's get to it. Oracle, who would you like to talk about first and foremost tonight?
Let's go with a linebacker. Let's go with linebacker Anthony Hill Jr. out of Texas. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Do the Raiders really need a linebacker now that they brought in Quay Walker? They brought in Nakobe Dean, 2 starting linebackers. Are they really going to spend their second-round pick on a linebacker? And if you really look at the roster after that, it's Tommy Eichenberg, it's Jamin Davis, who's still on the roster, and then it's Segan Olubi, who the Raiders just brought in from the Colts, who's more of a special teams player. So can they really add some depth at linebacker? And if you believe, like I believe, Anthony Hill is one of the more underrated players in the draft because I think this guy has a ton of athleticism. This guy has a ton of speed. This is a guy who coming into last football season was probably going to be a top 15 pick in a lot of people's eyes. And if you look at what this guy did at 2024 when Texas had a really good year, he went ahead and he had 107 tackles, 16 tackles for a loss, which led the SEC, 7.5 sacks, 4 forced fumbles, and an interception. So this guy had a heck of a year. And look, 2025 didn't go quite as well for Texas, and he didn't have quite as good of a season. He got hurt. He missed a couple of games. But I think this guy has a lot of tools in this draft. And if he was on a defense like Ohio State, I wonder how we'd be talking about him. Would we be talking about him as similar as we would be talking about a Sonny Styles or an Arvell Reese, kind of in that category? Maybe not as good as them, but kind of similar. The thing with Anthony Hill is he has some really good tape, but he has some really bad tape as well. There's some times where he really needs to work on his instincts a little bit in coverage, kind of like Devin White, where he kind of gets a little bit lost in zone coverage a little bit. There's some shifty running backs when he gets matched up on where he kind of struggles in man coverage a little bit. A little bit of tackling too high, I think, as well. So he's got a little bit of a mixed bag of tape, and that's why he's not viewed as a consensus first rounder, and he's viewed as more of a second rounder in anywhere from pick like 30 to pick like 45, kind of in that area. Mm-hmm. But I think he could be one of those guys that when it's all said and done a couple years down the road that people are saying, wow, I can't believe we passed on Anthony Hill, especially knowing the season that they had in 2024. So I could see him maybe if the Raiders were to still run a 4-3, because I don't know if I'm quite sold on the 3-4 a little bit yet based on their current personnel. You could put him on the field with Quay Walker and Nakobe Dean at the same time.
Right. And you know what? You said two things that I wanted to allude to. You nailed it, is health-wise. What kind of injury issues did he have, Oracle?
It was some lower, I don't know off the top of my head. It was some lower body injury. For the most part, he's been healthy. He played the entire 24 season. They played 16 games that year. And he also got on the field as a true freshman. He was one of the top recruits coming out of, I believe it was Denton, Texas, in that Dallas area where there's a ton of good football players. And he was able to play all the games his freshman year as well. So he just missed a couple games. So it's not like any big injuries or anything like that. So he's not like, there's some guys in this draft who have chronic health issues. He's not one of those guys.
Okay. So you think you're at 36, he's available. That's something the Raiders got to take a look at.
Yeah, I think it's something they got to take a look at. I'm curious how they view him, how they view his tape, how if he were to come in for an interview, how well he interviews. I saw his interviews at the Combine. He looks like a pretty well-spoken kid, but I'm curious, again, they're able to do more of a deep dive, background checks and all that stuff. He was the lead. He was the signal caller for the Texas defense too. So that's definitely a plus. But I think it's something they should definitely consider, even though linebacker is not a huge position of need.
Okay. And if you like that segment, please like and subscribe. Please like and subscribe. We're getting really, really close, as we always talk about, to getting our show monetized, which will go 100% to Raider Dad. We give every single penny to Raider Dad, and we will talk about that more and more for each show. Anthony Hill, because you talked about the backups, and I'm right now. You got Tommy Eichenberg, you got Cody Vandenberg, you got the Bergs behind the starters. I do believe that the Raiders need to pull off 2 linebackers in this draft, and even if you have to bring a UDFA, and it's always nice to have more linebackers on your special teams as well. So if I'm the Raiders, I definitely want to take a look at some linebackers soon. And again, Oracle, we talk about this all the time. I do believe that linebackers are going to be available in the second round, and we are going to talk more and more about wide receivers during the show. But it's almost like as soon as you pull off a wide receiver peg, then all of a sudden the next wide receiver, people start hesitating and they want to take the next wide receiver. They don't want to miss out on a wide receiver. I just talked to a Raiders assistant this week, and he talked about Brock Bowers. He wasn't even on their board. Then boom, here he is. You know, what do? You have to take him. They thought there was no way he was going to be there, and they had to take him. So if you're going to be that guy, if you're going to be that team, be ready for the unexpected. And from in all accounts, I think the Raiders are ready for this draft. From what they've done since they've been handed the first round draft choice, they've gone about business like a solid NFL program. Guys, if you hate Tom Brady, that's the way it goes. But you know what? I don't know if, with him and Spytek running it this year, they waited for Kubiak. They're going to get their man. They got most of every coach they wanted. I think they settled on Rick Dennison as their offensive line coach because they were kind of late to the party with getting coaches. So far, so good with the Raiders on how they've handled their operations. I give them an A, and it's not just because I'm a homer, even though I am a homer. I do believe that they've been doing everything correctly so far. Love the free agency. They were very, very quick on who they wanted. They got their needs. And remember, we were talking about it on our show. We were talking Cody Lindenberg, our center, our new center, Tyler Linderbaum.
Oh, Tyler Linderbaum.
And in that show, we were talking about offensive linemen, and there was a couple people that we missed on that. Jalen Naylor. I mean, who would have thought that he was nailed right on day one, which was impressive. Something in there. They have a plan, and that's a great. And I like that. Moving forward, who do you want to talk about next?
Let's go with cornerback Chris Johnson out of San Diego State.
Because he's from San Diego, that's why we went with him, guys.
Exactly. That's the only reason. But I think the Raiders got to look at their current nickel defense right now. And the 3 corners that would be starting are Teron Johnson in the nickel. We got Eric Stokes, who's coming back to play on the outside. And then Darian Porter is going to be the other corner who's on the roster right now. And the Raiders got to ask themselves, could we use an upgrade over Darian Porter? And I understand that Darian Porter is going into his second year. But Teron Johnson may only be there for 1 year. They may look to themselves and be like, we need to get another cornerback on this roster to not only push Darian Porter a little bit, but if Teron Johnson doesn't work out, we also need another cornerback on this team to be able to go forward in the future. And I think there's a lot of good stuff with Chris Johnson. Now, of course, the number one thing is he played at San Diego State. He played against Mountain West competition. There's some other cornerbacks like Brandon Cisse who played in the SEC. There's D'Angelo Pons who played in the Big Ten. Colton Hood in the SEC. But, I really liked his tape in Chris Johnson. And if you look at PFF, he had one of the highest PFF grades for any college football player this year. And the thing with him is he is a zone corner through and through. He has really good instincts in zone coverage. And if the Raiders want to play a lot of zone, I think he could come in and be a day one starter and potentially start over Darian Porter. And that doesn't mean that Darian Porter is not going to have a role in this team either, because I think there might be a some personnel or where they have 6 defensive backs on the field in what's called a dime package, where you have Paul Lamau, you have Chin, you have Johnson, you have Stokes, you could have Chris Johnson, and you could have Darian Porter as the 6th defensive back. So I do think there is value because if we look at the other corners on the team, it's a bunch of special teams guys really right now.
Right.
So they could use another guy. And what if Stokes or Johnson or Porter were to get hurt? Who are they going to start then? So I do think there is some value into looking at Chris Johnson from San Diego State, especially if they want to play a lot of zone. The other thing that I think he needs to work on, when I really was able to kind of watch him a little bit, I think some of the bigger receivers in the NFL, I mean, he's 194 pounds, so that's not small, but he's not the biggest guy in the world at corner either. And I think that some of these bigger receivers might be able to give him a little bit of a handful, especially at the catch point. He kind of has a hard time timing his jump a little bit and really meeting a receiver at the catch point when it comes to bigger receivers. So maybe he's not a press corner, but he's an off corner where he's about 5 to 10 yards off the line of scrimmage, and he's able to play zone and just read the quarterback and read where the patterns that the receivers are going. I think that's really his strength of his game.
Do you think he'll go as high in the second round?
I think he will go pretty high. I mean, just based on some of the mock drafts that I'm seeing.
Yeah.
But I mean, the thing with him at the combine was a lot of people weren't sure how fast he was. That was kind of the question mark. What's his speed like? And he ran a 4.4 40. Actually, I'm sorry. He ran a 4 flat 40. So that's a pretty good time. I mean, it's not blazing, but it's not a bad time either. So he was able to kind of check a box of he's not slow. So I think he will probably go kind of in the Anthony Hill range of maybe I have a hard time seeing being a first rounder because I think he's going to be probably the 5th cornerback taken. There's Mansour Delane, Jermon McCoy. I think Avion Terrell and Colton Hood go ahead of him. I think he'll be the 5th cornerback taken. And I could see him going anywhere, even maybe the Jets, who start off the second round. They could take him at pick 33. I wouldn't be surprised if that.
Again, we'll see where the receivers go because Terrell could drop too. This is one of those. This is going to be one of those drafts where you're going to see a lot of players fall through the cracks, especially into the second round. So great job on Chris Johnson being a San Diego State in our backyard. We've seen a lot of him. I got a feeling you're right. He's going to be more of a zone guy. Do you think that he could move to the slot?
I think he could. I mean, at his size, 194. That's not small. It's not big. A lot of teams want these big nickels now, but I don't think you have to have a big nickel on the field at all times. But I think he's a pretty decent tackler too. That's not a struggle of his. So I think that is something that he could do if the time calls for it. Yes. But I think if anything right now with Teron Johnson, he's ideally Teron Johnson is going to be the slot player. But again, if there's an injury there or they need a backup position there, they might cross-train him on that too. But I think his main job is going to be to come in and compete with Darian Porter. Yep,
got you. And I love Darian Porter. So, and again, competition at that position right now is very minimal. I think Darnay Holmes finally got signed by someone else. I think you have Tristan McCollum on there, who's more of a safety style. So I would be very, I would not have a problem with that pick. But if Terrell drops, you got to pull the hammer on that. And
I agree.
I can see that happening if the wide receivers start to go plentiful. If that corn cob pops out, the first corn cob pops, people are going to eat that corn. Next on the Oracles, and this Oracle had a great time with this guy, and I had a great time researching him after the Oracle told me what he wanted, and his agent called me and said this is a must for the show. So this is per his agent, and let's talk about this guy.
Yeah, this is Max Iheanacho. This guy is really interesting. He only started playing football a couple of years ago. He's from Nigeria. He has a basketball and a soccer background. And this guy's 325 pounds. And the thing that's getting people really excited is For a guy that weighs that much, he could really move. Now, the big thing with him is he kind of needs to simply learn the position of playing tackle. A lot of little things where he really needs to clean up. I'm not going to go all into it, but it's pretty much everything that requires you to, the little nuances and technicalities of playing tackle at the next level. He needs to learn it. And the reason I think that he could really be in play at pick 36 is because when you're drafting Fernando Mendoza, and we got to look at what the Raiders did in the offseason on the offensive line, brought in Tyler Linderbaum, center, re-signed Jordan Meredith, guard or center, brought in Spencer Burford, guard, even though he played tackle in college. But
he played both with the Niners.
Yeah, but he's more of a guard, shorter arms. I mean, really, outside of Colton Miller and Charles Grant, who's playing tackle for this team if one of those two were to get hurt? So I think it would be smart to bring in, and he is a developmental tackle through and through. Now, do you ideally want to take a developmental player at pick 36? No. But when you're talking about the position of offensive tackle and you're drafting Fernando Mendoza number 1 overall, I think it's something that you really got to prioritize and make sure you have enough bodies at the tackle position that if, let's say, Colton Miller were to get hurt again, or maybe he were to come in, maybe Ian Nachor comes into camp and he's better than Charles Grant. So, again, you want to make sure that you're giving Fernando Mendoza enough protection. The Raiders were the 32nd offensive line, according to Pro Football Focus. So whatever you think of PFF, I mean, the fact that they're 32nd is something you need to take into account.
Yep.
So I think this is something that the Raiders should really consider at a very important position.
Now, this guy, I got to watch him a lot. I am a big Sam Levitt guy. Big. In my opinion, next year, Sam Levitt is gonna rip it apart. Now he won't be playing obviously for Arizona State. But watch this right here, and this is what I saw a couple of times in his tape. Watch how the defense shifts to him, and he goes and he takes on basically a stunt and a double team. See that? And he stays his ground. Let's watch that one more time. This happens a lot in his tape. Watch this. Two guys coming. Boom. Very, very, you know what? I am excited about this guy a lot. Now, is he going to be there in the 3rd round, do you think?
No. I mean, I think he goes – I think there's a very good chance he goes in the 1st round. I think there's a chance that the Raiders might have to trade up to get him if they really think he's worth developing.
Okay. And then you get the 5-year contract, and then he's worth something that you can hold on to. You're not going to – now, is he going to be a right tackle only?
I mean, if he were to start this year, yeah. I mean, because of Colton Miller on the left side, but you never know with Colton Miller. So you can't take anyone for granted. So that's why I think, I mean, you could have a scenario where Ian Nachor and Charles Grant are the tackles of the future. So I think it's very smart to prepare to have tackles now than go into an offseason going, oh man, we need a tackle really bad. We have to overpay for it in free agency, or we have to overdraft it. So why not get it now, develop it now, so it's not a glaring need later?
Absolutely. Left tackles are like getting wide receivers in free agency. So you better have the money to go. Now, real quickly, before we go to the next player, you mentioned Colton Miller. Availability is ability, in my opinion. And he's had some health issues. And when you're getting up there in these years, how many more years does he have at left tackle where he's going to play 16, 17? Let's give him 15 to 17 games. That's a tough one. And there's very few guys at that position. You can always give me the Anthony Munoz's back in the day that played all the time in the Basellis, and you can do all that research on guys that have been healthy, but that's not a position. We were talking about Braden Smith earlier in the draft in the free agency process, and it's just one of those things where you're like, hey man, this guy's great. He's like a JPJ, but when he's available, but he hasn't been available. So that's something that, I mean, we're always going to worry about with Colton Miller. And that's something that the Raiders worry about. Although they gave him the contract last year, I think that this pick right here, something that I'm really excited for, because watching that guy, that's one big, fast, athletic man. And if he's only been playing football for a couple of years, holy guacamole, Batman. So who do we have next, Oracle?
Let's go with Peter Woods. Let's go with a defensive tackle out of Clemson. So this guy has a ton of upside. And this is a guy who was a very high recruit coming out of high school at Alabama. Went to Clemson, was a 3-year player for them. Now, when you watch this guy's tape, his get-off is explosive. And for a guy who weighs, guys who weigh 300 pounds and who move like that, I mean, those are the things that get you really excited in the draft, because you think to yourselves, man, if he could just get coached up a little bit better, he could be a very, very disruptive player. The issue with him is he just never really produced that much at Clemson. I mean, he never really lit up the box score. And, you know, I think there's going to be a little bit of hesitancy with a lot of people. And this was a guy also coming into the season that a lot of people thought could be a top 10 pick. But I'm looking at his college production. He only had 14 and a half tackles for loss and 5 sacks over 3 seasons. So that's not exactly jumping off the page for a guy who's this elite defensive tackle prospect. And that's why throughout this draft process, he's really fallen down the boards a lot. Plus, he's like a lot of guys, a lot of defensive linemen in this draft. He has shorter arms, and that's something that's a lot of – and what does that mean? That means that when you get these tackles or guards that they really have longer arms and they're able to extend, they're able to lock on a lot easier. And if you have shorter arms, it's harder to disengage and really get into a hand fight with it. So some people will tell you it doesn't matter. I mean, you need to beat it with leverage. But again, maintaining good leverage requires a lot of good technique and a lot of conditioning, because when your conditioning goes down, it's harder to maintain leverage when your body mentally can't keep up with it.
Right.
So again, it's a little bit of a project, but I think with Peter Woods, if the Raiders are not going to be in a 3-4, I think he's ideal for more of a 4-3 scheme. And I think he's more of a 3 technique. That's the other thing at Clemson. Clemson kind of, they really toyed around with him. They would put him at a defensive end, and sometimes they would ask him to 2 gap. And I think he needs to be a defensive tackle and a 3 technique, kind of like what Warren Sapp was in Tampa Bay, where he just lines up mano-a-mano against the guard. You're able to formation him to where he's not going to get double teamed by a tackle or a center, and let him just go to work on a guard. And I think with his explosive get off and athleticism, I think that's where he's able to really be really disruptive at. So I really like a lot of what Peter Woods does. I just think you got to really understand what he is and what he's not, and put him in a scheme to really highlight the things that he's good at.
Yeah. Again, is he going to be available in the 3rd or 4th round, or is that somebody, again, you're taking a flyer on?
Yeah, I think he could be available at pick 36 just because of his lack of production. He's had some nagging injuries too, where he's had to miss some time. So I think that's something that could really affect him as well. And yeah, I mean, I could see a team in the 1st round rolling the dice because they really see the potential. They really see him as a scheme fit. Maybe he was able to go in for one of these interviews and he was able to really wow the GM or the coaching staff, and they really want to take him. But I think his lack of production could really make him fall to pick 36. And maybe the Raiders and Rob Leonard's like, you know what? I really want to coach this kid. I really think I could get the most out of him.
Yeah, I would like to see if he's going to get one of the 30 visits to the Raiders itself. So lastly, which one do you want to talk about? The last of yours, and then I'm going to do mine real quick, and then we're going to go to our superstar awaiting. Yes. The superstar is awaiting. He's up there doing his 40-yard sprints right now.
Well, last but not least, look, if the Raiders are going to go to a 3-4, they really need a nose tackle on this roster. I mean, who's going to play nose tackle right now? Is it Adam Butler? Is it Thomas Booker? I think they're more defensive tackles meant for a 4-3 than a 3-4. But if you're going to run a 3-4, you really need kind of a big hulking nose tackle, and really the only guy they have right now is J.J. Pegues. But enter Caden McDonald out of Ohio State, and this guy had he was really only a one-year starter for Ohio State, but man, can this guy stop the run? I mean, he had 65 tackles as a nose tackle, 8 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 2 forced fumbles. He was a unanimous All-American, the Big Ten Defensive Lineman of the Year. This guy, when you watch him in the run game, is just something. He's just an immovable force. And again, why is he going to be there at pick 36? Because how much of upside does he really have as a pass rusher? I mean, he's one of these guys. If the bull rush doesn't win when he's rushing the passer, he's kind of becomes I hate to say it, but he kind of becomes a useless player. Right. And he's just not really doing much after that. But look, if you're running a 3-4, you need that nose tackle. So you could have Kwity Paye and Tyree Wilson be the ends, and then have Malcolm Kuntz and Max Crosby be the outside linebackers. So they could really, this really becomes a position of need, right, for the Raiders if they're going to run this 3-4. And I think Caden McDonald is the perfect guy for them to get. Plus, he's also he was a true junior this year. So he's a little bit of a younger player too than some other guys in the draft. So that's what I like about him. The fact that he's a little younger makes me think he does have a little bit more room for upside.
And you know what? The tape is unbelievable because I watched the Indiana tape, just wanted to see it. That was a slugfest. And that's a great offensive line that Indiana has. And he was doing very well. There was a lot of good battles in that game, which I love watching that game. That is what you call a heavyweight fight. And you know what? Are we talking about Fernando Mendoza right now? If the kicker from Ohio State makes that kick. So I watched that game and I'm like, holy crap. I mean, I think we would be, but we wouldn't be going, oh, he's tough. You know what I mean? The stuff we've seen in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So evident wouldn't have came out because of that missed kick. So Oracle, I'm putting a gun to your head. Your agent said I could do this jokingly. If you were to pick one of your players, who do you think the Raiders would pick?
I keep going back to the fact that if we're drafting Fernando Mendoza, we really need to make sure we have tackle depth. So if all 5 of those players are on the board or available, I'm going to go Maxi Iheanacho. Even though he's the guy who's least ready to start this season, I just think long-term for the Raiders, this is something that they really need to get under wraps and not make it a problem later on. I would love to have Caden McDonald. I think he's a guy who could come in and be a 3-4 nose tackle immediately. Yep. But I just think it's so important to have quality tackles in this league. And if I were to have any of those 5, it'd be Maxi Iheanacho.
Nice. And you know what? I would have no problem with that. Now, guys, I'm going to do one safety per week. And then at the end of the weeks, because of the Oracle's agent, lawyer, I only get to talk about one player a week. So I'm going to do the safeties. Oracle's agent said I get to do the safeties for this draft because he knows how much I'm not in love with our safety. So what I would like to talk about,
If they can't convert them.
What do you think of this gentleman, Oracle? I really like AJ Halsey. I'm not going to he is not on a lot of top 5 safety boards, but after watching all the safeties, this one jumped out at me. And I think what happened was to me, Oracle, is my old Jack Tatum jersey jumped on when I was watching this guy. And this guy, to me, is an enforcer. I really like the way he comes up and tackles. He's very good at ball hawking. I mean, you see there, he's good. He punched out a lot of balls last year. Sideline to sideline, this guy can really lay the licks on. I think he's good in coverage when it's a zone coverage. Man to man, he struggles a little bit. Watch this right here. Okay. I mean, this is just stuff you cannot teach. And look where he's hitting them. He's hitting them right on the ball. And I see this come over and over and over again with this guy. I think he's really good safety in the red zone. I know that there's a lot of talk about his arm length, but this guy to me is an enforcer in the middle of the field. Some people think he's a day one starter, but if you notice all of his hits that I got to see watching him play, he knows where to come. He knows where to go. He hits the ball well. They're talking about, and I didn't see it, but they're saying that a lot of his average range of, his active motion, from one side to the other is a little bit slower than others, but they said his ball hawking skills, he's always got a good eye on the quarterback. So this is I will give you my analysis on who I want the Raiders to get in pick number 36. I don't believe this guy would be a smart pick at 36, but let's just say you did go for your tackle, or we did go for Peter Woods. You know what I'm saying? This guy right here is just, if you watch him, he's always got the ball. That's uncanny, Oracle. That right there to me is just the guy that's got that sixth sense, that knows where the ball is all the time. Look at this. Boom. I like that kind of safety. I'm an enforcer type of guy. I am. And watch this. Boom.
Yeah.
What do you I watching his tape, I fell more and more and more in love with this guy. And his coaches talked about his instinctiveness and how he's very well prepared for the games. He's a guy who does his homework. He does his study, and this guy is a football player. Now today I was waiting for his, today was the pro day. He did not participate because he ran a 4.53. And the last thing I'm going to say is he ran a 4.53 at the combine, and it was not something that, that people had a little bit of a comment about. Hey man, what's going on? He ran a 4.53. So today I was hoping to see if he would be running his 40. He did not run his 40 today. He didn't do any drills today. And today was LSU's pro day. So I'll talk a little bit more about it when I bring up my next safety. I don't know where I would definitely not draft him in the second round. But if he falls into the third round, somebody you may want to think about. My next week, I'll have another safety that I'll talk about, and we'll talk about that next week. But without further ado, I have another one coming in. This guy, I'm going to let him tell you about himself. This guy is a Raider fan. He's a Raider fan. Big time. He knows his stuff, and he just graduated college from Sonoma State. And without further ado, what's his name, Oracle? I forgot.
You forgot already? It's Wyatt. Come on.
It's Wyatt.
Come
Wyatt,
on,
what's up?
How's it going, guys?
Good. Did you like the show so far?
I absolutely love it. Yeah, I think you guys all made great points so far on what the Raiders need to address. And I think there's a lot of different directions we can go here with the second round, but I think it's vitally important that we strike and hit gold here.
So let's go ahead, jump into it. We've been waiting to hear your what you've talked to us about, and I want the fans to hear what Wyatt has to say. We're trying to name Wyatt, but we'll talk about that later. You got to get him a cool Oracle name. But Wyatt, if put your John Spytek hat on, and at pick 36, who are you gonna take?
So I've thought about this in depth quite a lot the past couple of days, and I think there's multiple directions you can go. Obviously, we need to address the secondary a bit, the defensive tackle position. But a factor that I'm looking at is kind of just adding another dynamic weapon to this offense. And I think if we're going to take Fernando Mendoza first overall, we need to get him some more help on the offensive end. And that's where I think that drafting a guy by the name of Denzel Boston out of Washington University would be a great selection for the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, he's typically going between the 4th and 6th spot on most analysts' big boards in terms of wide receivers. He's 6'4", 210 pounds. He's 22 years old, and he's played 4 seasons at Washington University, most notably in 2024 and 25, compiling 125 receptions, amassing 1,715 yards, and most notably, in my opinion, 20 receiving touchdowns, which I think is something that the Raiders desperately need at the wide receiver position as we look at it right now currently. I liked the move of bringing in Jalen Naylor. I think he adds a nice little speed/vertical threat capability to the offense. Obviously, Trey Tucker, he's been on the team for a couple of years. His deep speed and gadget making is very nice for a play caller like Kubiak. But I don't know, between Beck and Thornton, I'm not like fully sold on the wide receiver position as a whole. So I think bringing in a guy like Denzel Boston would be huge for the Las Vegas Raiders. His strengths on the football field entail that he is a true X receiver with ideal size and physicality, which is something that the Raiders wide receiver core right now simply lacks, in my opinion. And bringing in Mendoza, you want to get someone that's QB friendly. Well, Denzel Boston, it doesn't really get much more QB friendly than that in terms of wide receivers. You can put him anywhere on the formation. He's a super versatile scheme fit. He excels in the intermediate routes, and he's a consistent chain mover, which is another thing the Raiders receiver room lacks. And then most notably to me, he's a red zone mismatch, which will help kind of take some of the pressure off of the tight ends, Bowers and Mayer, which I think will give a nice little wrinkle to the Raiders offense, especially in the red zone as well, but also just all over the field in general. I mean, having a guy that has strong hands, ideal body control, and spatial awareness, someone like Denzel Boston, I think would be a perfect fit. Some scouts do bring up that he doesn't have like that take the top off the defense type of speed. But I rebuttal with that he's a very high intelligent based receiver, and his physicality and build makes up for that. I don't think the Raiders necessarily need an absolute burner here. I mean, they already have Tucker. They already have Naylor. They already have a couple of guys that are known for their speed. I think they need someone that's completely the opposite of that, and that's a physical possession receiver that can dominate the middle of the field. And the only question that I have here for Denzel Boston, will he be available at pick 36? That's highly debatable, as obviously with the modern day of the NFL, throwing the football has become the most favorable way of offense. And, there could be a run on wide receivers early in the draft, so the Raiders might have to trade up for him. But if I'm John Spytek, I would actually consider doing that, depending on how expensive the trade result would be.
Right.
But I think there's a chance he could just slide right in there at 36.
There's a good possibility. Now, weren't they saying the same thing last year about Tatora McMillan? Remember that? There was a little bit of the same they were talking about that conversation, and wow, probably did he win the offensive rookie of the year? So right, what you just saw right there, this is what I think that you were trying to nail to is this is what Surratt gave to Mendoza, was that back shoulder, beautiful hands catch. And I think Oracle, did he nail the red zone thing? I think that was beautiful. I mean, I agree with you. He is a mismatch in the red zone.
Yeah, I think the thing what I really like about Boston is he could be that receiver that Fernando Mendoza as a rookie comes in and he has a guy that's kind of his guy where they both came in together. And when I watched Elijah Surratt and Fernando Mendoza really master those back shoulder fades throws together, I think that Denzel Boston could be that big bodied receiver that is really good at the back shoulder fades as well. And especially in the red zone together, I think having to defend Brock Bowers and Denzel Boston in the red zone, along with is Ashton Janty going to run the outside zone. Now I think you have three threats that you really have to factor into for the defenses that are playing the Raiders. So I think he is a trade-up guy because I think he will go ahead of pick 36. But even if he's in range, I think that's something they really got to consider because I honestly think he's a better player than all five of the players that I listed.
Right. But again, we talk about this all the time. When it's what is the need of the other teams, and fortunately for the wide receivers, there's always a need for a wide receiver, and there's a lot of receivers getting older. You're in good hands by getting Boston, and I think you nailed it, Wyatt, with a guy like Mendoza. You bring these two guys in, and that's something that he knows he's going to have for the next several years.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, with Denzel Boston, it's like you guys said, like bringing him together with Mendoza out of the draft I think it's just the perfect way to go in terms of like a development standpoint, as well as just making the Raiders a better team immediately.
Yeah, he finds the end zone.
Yeah, he has a knack for the end zone, a knack just even across like any level of the field, especially like over the middle, kind of like a safety blanket as well for Mendoza, which I don't think the Raiders have currently on roster right now, but bringing in like a guy like this, then they might go Surratt in the 3rd round. Maybe they'll take someone off of Oracle's list, someone on the defensive side, a tackle. There's a lot of good options they can go here, but I trust that Spytek and the Raiders front office will make the right decision because, well, they've made a lot of the right decisions so far, at least it seems like.
Since this year. So out of all of Oracle's picks, if you got your John Spytek hat back on and say Boston gets pulled before the Raiders even have a shot to trade for him. So who would you pick out of Oracle's group?
Well, out of Oracle's group, I would definitely go with Caden McDonald out of Ohio State. I mean, first of all, I feel like Ohio State defenders, they almost always seemingly turn out to be like absolute studs. And I think that's a big weakness for the Raiders defense as well. That up the middle defensive presence, his dominant space eating up the middle could be very valuable. And his effective run stopping as well, I think would really fit what Rob Leonard is trying to do on the defensive side of the football.
And it's always nice to have 2 nose tackles that can come on and off the field. That keeps them fresh.
I totally agree.
Yeah, because I'm a JJ Pegues guy, but watching him last year, I did see there was a couple of facts. This was the Giants game where you could see in the 3rd and 4th quarter, he was gassed. And like Oracle just eloquently said, that as soon as you start getting gas, those hands get tired, and you can't grip it and rip it like a lot of guys can. I like the pick. I do like Caden. Oracle again. You just come prepared all the time. It looks like you have a guy here, Wyatt. I mean, great job on especially on your first show. That's awesome. I agree with you. I like Boston a lot, but I do believe because linebackers, wide receivers, I don't think offensive linemen are going to go that quick. I just believe that the linebackers and the wide receivers are going to go quick in this draft. I think that once the first linebackers taken, I think teams that are needy of linebackers, which are especially a lot in the early round or the early 1st and 2nd rounds, I worry about that. So we'll see. I mean, that's what the fun is. So you, Wyatt, we will see you next week. And next week, Wyatt, you get to do some more. We get to see Otis Sistrunk's son, Jeffrey Sistrunk, is coming on the show next week. So we're going to do I want you to give me one other player, both of you guys. Let's go with one more player in the 2nd round, player 36 that you get. We'll go ahead and do one each. And then we get to talk to Jeffrey Sistrunk and talk about the man from the University of Mars. Wyatt, unfortunately, both of you guys weren't alive to see this guy play, but this guy was actually what you wanted to talk about in player 36. A little bit more of a pass rushing Caden McDaniel. This guy he could fill up the middle. You see him there with John Matuzak on top, and on the bottom, the great Bubba Smith, another Hall of Famer. So we will talk with Jeffrey Sistrunk about his dad. And his dad is still alive. And have you guys ever heard of the movie Car Wash?
Yeah. From a long time ago. Yeah.
Yeah, he's in Car Wash. He's actually in the movie Car Wash. But we will get into that next week. So with further ado, do you guys have any last words? Wyatt?
I think that pretty much covers it. Yeah.
How'd you like your first show?
Absolutely love it. I love what you guys are doing here on the Mad Bomber podcast, and I'm hoping to provide more of my insight where I can.
Oh, you did great. You did great. We are geeks. And
hold on. Wyatt, you got to give me one more. Besides the guys on my list and Denzel Boston, who is the one guy that you would want besides that we haven't talked about yet?
Yeah, so if I had to go with one more guy, I was actually thinking about this earlier. I really like Texas Tech's defense last year. There's actually two guys from that defense that are projected to go in the second round. But if I had to choose just one, I would have to go with Lee Hunter, nose tackle. I think the Raiders, they could really benefit from a big war daddy up front like that. Just kind of plugging the lanes and making everyone around him better. The new transactions like Pay, having Crosby back as well. I think it would just make everyone's life easier with him manhandling the offensive lineman on the other side of the line. And also Texas Tech, I mean, it's a reputable school. I'm all for something like that as well. But ultimately, I do kind of expect us to go in an offensive direction, if I had to guess, just because Kubiak's an offensive-minded head coach. And we addressed a decent amount of holes in free agency on the defensive side, in my opinion. Obviously, there's still some room for improvement, but I think we really need to get more dynamic on offense and kind of just build around Fernando Mendoza.
Well, you are in the AFC West. Great point. Great point. Because you're going to have to do some scoring in this division. This isn't the NFC South. This is the AFC West. And every quarterback can toss that ball. And hopefully our boy Fernando Mendoza. One last question, Wyatt. Would you get another quarterback, or would you stay with AOC? Or who out there would you like to see the Raiders possibly get?
Yeah, so I know this might not be a super popular opinion, but if I were to bring another quarterback, I would bring in a veteran, because I feel like having a rookie in Mendoza, you want to have a veteran presence to kind of bring him along and mentor him. And I know it's not a popular choice, but I have been thinking about Kirk Cousins. I know that it's not a popular choice, but at the same time, he's played in Kubiak's system before. I think he could be exactly what we need. And I'm not entirely sure what the contract situation is, but I know the Atlanta Falcons are guaranteed to pay off, I'm pretty sure, most of his contract. So if we could get some type of how the Steelers were able to get Russell Wilson after his time with the Denver Broncos, if it could be something like that, something dirt cheap, where we're getting a veteran guy that knows Kubiak's offense and he has experience in it to mentor Mendoza, I think that would be a realistic target for the Raiders.
And you wouldn't worry about a quarterback controversy?
I don't think so. I mean, I think everyone's fallen in love with Mendoza, and especially what he proved in college with Indiana. I mean, having literally a perfect season. Like, how could anybody move off of Mendoza? Especially as Raider fans, we've literally been talking about him all season. So I don't think so.
Okay. Oracle, what do you think? We got a kicker here. We got a good guy here.
I got to step my game up, man. Definitely.
Yes.
I mean, the way he was breaking down Denzel Boston, I mean, I was just like, whoo, man, he came prepared. So
awesome.
I mean,
you did great, Wyatt. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
guys, we will see you guys next Monday, 6:30 at the same bat time, same bat station. And we will be having Mr. Sistrunk, Jeffrey Sistrunk. So without further ado, everybody have a great week. Be safe, and good night now.
Good night now.
Roethlisberger. Intercepted again. Picked off by Chris Carr. This is a foot race with Roethlisberger. And there he goes.
Have really changed the situation here.
Intercepted back for the touchdown.
The Jets could capitalize. Garner. Oh, well, this is going to make everything move. Everything. They're on to Foxborough. Touchdown.
Tannehill under pressure, and it's intercepted. Tipped and picked off. Maurice Hurst off to the races. Tannehill cuts him down at about the 25-yard line. What a turn of events for the Raiders. Tim Brown deep for the punt from Hendrick. Come Raiders. the 18-yard line. Kendrick knew he couldn't get that kickoff and held on to it.
The penalty they spotted at the 7. They hand off, it's Pryor. Lot of real estate to the 30. Pryor is off and running inside Steelers territory.